Hi guys, and welcome to yet another day of me messing around in the kitchen. And as always, everything I make is small batch, which may be perfect for your single self or for those who just don't want to share with the people they live with. Today, I wanted to share a recipe for something new I tried making. This is a recipe for a flaky pastry taro mooncake. This mooncake has layers upon layers of flaky pastry that envelop a slightly sweetened taro paste. I think I've always been intimidated to make these because they use shortening for the pastry, which I don't own. But do not fret, I've developed this recipe which uses butter instead. And guys, this pastry is super flaky and they turned out so well. My sister even said she was impressed, and she's not one to say things like that. Anyway, let's get started, shall we? I started off by making the dough portion, or the yo pi. I'm not really sure what to call it in English, but I'll explain a bit later on how we get this mooncake to be so flaky. Spoiler alert, it's kind of like a croissant, which is super cool. Anyway, to make the dough portion, we'll just combine 42 grams of all-purpose flour, 4 grams of cornstarch, 20 grams of cold butter, 5 grams of powdered sugar, and a pinch of salt in a small bowl. It's important that your butter is cold to achieve that flaky pastry. Once these ingredients are just combined, add 15 grams of cold water, then knead the dough by hand for 7 minutes. Once you're done kneading, we'll roll this out into a squarish rectangle shape and let this dough rest for about 30 minutes in the fridge. While that's sitting in the fridge, let's move on to the laminate, or the yosu. I think it's actually like the oil dough and the water dough, but that made zero sense to me, so I'm gonna call it the dough and the laminate. Anyway, in that same small bowl we used earlier, combine 40 grams of all-purpose flour, 8 grams of cornstarch, and 20 grams of butter. Combine these ingredients to form some small clumps. Then we'll add some purple food dye. I actually only own the primary colors for food dyes, so I've just made purple with blue and red. Some color theory for y'all. You're gonna want to turn this onto a work surface, and it's honestly kind of hard to get this to form into a ball of dough, which is why I didn't want to call it dough. But as I struggle here, let me explain how it's like a croissant. We're basically gonna do some small scale lamination with this oil dough, or laminate. Since it's fat and flour, it'll go between the layers of our dough portion, just like how butter is used between the layers of croissant dough. This way you'll actually get those flaky layers, since the fat portion separates the dough as it's baking. Once this is all cohesive, we can now laminate our dough. Since the dough is not finished resting yet, let's divide this laminate into 5 equal portions. Then, once you have these portions, cover them so they don't dry out. Once your dough is done resting, let's actually start the lamination process now, shall we? When your dough looks good, split it into 5 equal portions. Then roll the portion dough into a circle and wrap it around the laminate. I like to roll out the dough to be thinner on the edges, so when you wrap it around the laminate, it'll end up being pretty even all around. It's a similar technique to what you do when you're making steamed buns. Repeat this with the remaining dough portions. Now, let's roll these spheres into an ovalish shape, and then from there roll it into a log. This is our first stage lamination, and you can kind of imagine how we're making some flaky layers already. After you've rolled out 5 logs, I'm gonna test your patience again because we're tossing this in the fridge for 20 minutes. It's okay though, I've come up with a plan to keep us busy. While those are resting, let's make the taro paste. It's super simple. I'm mashing 120 grams of steamed taro. Once that's mashed to a nice consistency, add 15 grams of granulated sugar. This filling isn't super sweet, so if you'd like to adjust the sugar level, I've listed them here and in the description box below. Once you've gotten a paste that you're happy with, let's measure out 25 grams of filling and roll it into a ball. Then simply repeat this 4 more times for each of the 5 mooncakes we're making. And that's it for the taro paste. So now we just go watch paint dry while we wait for the pastry to finish resting. Alright, now that our dough is done resting, we're gonna roll these dough pieces out into logs again. This time rolling them into a stubbier and shorter log. For these logs, as you're rolling out your dough, you'll want to leave the middle portion slightly thicker and roll out the edges as thin as possible. This way, when you're rolling your dough into a log, you'll be able to get as much lamination in there as possible, and therefore also get as many flaky layers as possible. Once you've gotten your logs, we're going to cut each of the logs in half, stack 2 of these little logs, then roll out our dough to be ready for filling. Make sure you check which side of the circle you'd like to have on the outside for your swirl mooncakes. I forgot to do that, and some of my mooncakes turned out less pretty than others. But nevertheless, the mooncakes still tasted delicious. Anyway, when you're rolling out the pastry, similar to what we did earlier, you'll want to leave the center slightly thicker and roll out the edges to be a little thinner. Then, fill each pastry with one of the filling balls we made earlier. To seal up the pastry, squeeze the ends shut a little bit. Then give it a slight roll around on your work surface. And that's one mooncake done. Repeat this 4 more times to get 4 lovely mooncakes. Then we'll place these on a baking tray and bake them off at 325 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 to 25 minutes, or until the pastry starts to turn slightly golden brown on top. And now your taro swirl mooncakes are finished. The pastry is so flaky and satisfying to eat, and the taro paste is light and fresh. I really want to try experimenting with other fillings, so stay tuned for that. But thank you guys for joining me in conquering my fear of making flaky pastry mooncakes. If you like small batch recipes that aren't super sweet, make sure to subscribe. Until next time!